There was a time when the sky stretched endlessly above her, vast, golden, and warm, filled with the hum of cicadas and the soft whisper of wind through the fields of Texas. Sandy Cheeks had grown beneath that sky, surrounded by open air, light, and the certainty of solid ground beneath her feet. Every sunrise seemed like a promise, and every dusk, a gentle reminder that home was made not just of place, but of purpose. But purpose had called her far from home. Beneath the surface of the sea, where light bent and color softened, she found the unknown. It wasn't a reckless leap, but a quiet, deliberate step toward discovery, a journey guided by curiosity and faith in her own hands. As she prepared to leave the land she knew, she stood still in the early morning calm. The scent of earth and pine filled the air. Her heart, steady but tender, felt the weight of what she was leaving behind. The sound of her home, the comfort of familiar winds, the horizon she would no longer see. She imagined the ocean, vast, deep, endless, and wondered how it might feel to live in a world that did not breathe air, where everything moved slower, softer, as if in a dream. Beneath that unknown surface lay a silence she could not yet understand. When the time came, she set out with quiet determination. Her equipment gleamed under the morning sun, tools of exploration, designs of invention, dreams encased in steel and glass. She was not running from her world, but reaching beyond it. The ship that carried her drifted across miles of glittering water, each wave rising and falling like a breath. The farther she went, the more she felt the rhythm of the ocean blending with her own heartbeat. There was fear, yes, but also peace, as if the unknown were simply another kind of horizon waiting to be seen. Days turned into nights. The sea spoke in low murmurs, its voice deep and ancient. She felt small, but not lost, like a single thought moving through an infinite mind. And when the vessel finally descended beneath the surface, the world changed. Colors dissolved into blue and green, and movement slowed into a graceful dance of currents and shadows. The sunlight above became a distant echo, scattering in soft ribbons that flickered like dreams. In that silence, Sandy found what she had come for, a sense of awe so complete it quieted every thought. She had left the sky behind, but in its place, she had found another kind of vastness, one that whispered instead of roared, one that invited her to listen instead of speak. She built her first dome in that place, a sphere of glass and steel that held both air and possibility. It shimmered in the dim light, a fragile world within another. Inside it, she created a small echo of home, a patch of grass, a tree, and a breeze that she had built herself. When she first stepped inside and removed her helmet, the air filled her lungs with the scent of home, artificial, yet somehow real. She looked through the glass, out into the silent ocean beyond, and felt both separated and connected at once. The sea moved endlessly outside her dome, a world of slow motion and quiet power. Creatures drifted past, curious and calm. They did not judge or question. They simply existed, as she did, sharing space in the boundless expanse. That night, as she rested beneath her artificial tree, she realized that the sky she had left behind still lived within her. The same stars that once guided her dreams now glimmered faintly through the ocean's veil, distant but enduring. In the stillness of her new world, Sandy Cheeks closed her eyes and listened to the pulse of the sea, to the hum of her own creation, and to the quiet truth of adventure, that to seek is to belong, even when you are far from home. And so began her story, a story not of escape, but of expansion, not of loss, but of discovery. Beneath the dome she had built, the world above met the world below, and a Texan squirrel became a citizen of the deep. Inside the dome, time flowed differently. There were no clocks to mark the hours, no sun to measure the passing of days, only the steady rhythm of the ocean's quiet movements and the hum of life within the glass sphere she called home. Sandy Cheeks had built something remarkable, not just a shelter, but a living bridge between two worlds. Within those transparent walls, air shimmered softly, a fragile veil separating her from the immense silence outside. Every breath she took was a small victory of ingenuity. Every heartbeat echoed the same determination that had brought her here. She spent her early days adjusting, not to fear or isolation, but to stillness. The ocean around her was never truly silent, yet its sounds were slow, resonant, and patient. The shifting sand, the distant movement of currents, the pulse of unseen tides, all became a kind of symphony. She began to understand that beneath the surface, everything spoke through motion. The coral swayed in gentle rhythm, and schools of tiny fish drifted together as though guided by thought. Even the faint light filtering through the dome seemed alive, bending and wavering as though it breathed alongside her. Sandy often stood near the glass, her gloved hand resting lightly against it, feeling the subtle pressure of the water beyond. The vastness of the ocean no longer felt alien. It felt ancient, a mind that had existed long before her and would continue long after. It was both humbling and comforting. To make this new life sustainable, Sandy worked tirelessly. Her dome was a laboratory, a home, and a testament to balance. She built systems that purified air, recycled water, and harnessed energy from the ocean's gentle flow. Each mechanism hummed softly, a mechanical heartbeat that kept her world alive. Yet, for all her inventions, the most extraordinary thing within the dome was the quiet itself. It allowed her to think without rush, to feel without noise. The absence of distraction became her greatest teacher. There were moments, sometimes in the still hours before rest, when she would sit near her small tree and watch the faint ripples of light that danced across the dome's ceiling. In those moments, she found peace not through perfection, but through observation, the understanding that the ocean did not resist change, it embraced it. Outside, she could see shapes move, the shadows of creatures drawn by curiosity. They approached cautiously, peering at the strange air-filled bubble in their world. She smiled softly, knowing she was just as curious about them as they were about her. Occasionally, a jellyfish would drift near, glowing faintly like a lantern in the dim sea. Their slow, rhythmic movement reminded her of breathing, steady, deliberate, eternal. She would watch until they vanished again into the blue, leaving trails of faint light behind. Sandy began to record her observations, not as data, but as reflections. Each note carried more than scientific insight. It carried emotion. She found herself writing about the personality of the sea, its patience, its quiet cycles of growth and decay. She realized that beneath its surface there was wisdom older than any book could hold. The days, or what she assumed were days, passed, and the dome became an extension of herself. The air tasted of her own invention, the warmth came from her careful calibration, and the faint sound of bubbles rising became a lullaby. Sometimes she missed the wind, the dry, whispering gusts of her Texas home, carrying the scent of open plains. But she also found a new kind of wind beneath the sea, the steady movement of currents around her dome, soft but constant, reminding her that motion and stillness could coexist. She began to meditate on that balance. Her world was built on two opposites, air and water, land and sea, science and nature. Yet they existed here without conflict. The dome did not fight the ocean. It floated within it. It survived not by defiance, but by harmony. This realization changed the way Sandy thought about her work. Her experiments became quieter, gentler. Instead of trying to control her environment, she began to listen to it. She adjusted her systems to move with the rhythm of the sea, rather than against it. And the more she did, the smoother everything became. The dome grew calmer, the mechanism steadier, her heart lighter. At night, when she lay beneath the artificial tree, she sometimes felt the faint vibration of whales calling in the distance, long, low notes that moved through the water and into the very glass around her. She could not understand their song, but she felt its truth. It was not loneliness, but connection, a reminder that even across vast distances, life was never truly alone. Under that resonant hum, she would close her eyes and breathe slowly, the soft hum of her machines blending with the pulse of the sea outside. She thought of the sky she had left behind and realized that she had not abandoned it. She had simply found another kind of sky, one that flowed instead of soared, one that surrounded instead of hovered above. In this world of liquid silence, Sandy Cheeks discovered wonder not in what was new, but in what had always been there, waiting, patient, beneath the surface. Beyond the curved walls of the dome, the sea waited, vast and quiet, a living expanse of unspoken wisdom. For days, Sandy had gazed at it, studying its calm rhythm, listening to its voice through the faint vibrations of the glass. Yet, she knew that to truly understand this world, she would have to step beyond the safety she had built. One morning, though the word morning had little meaning beneath the ocean's surface, Sandy prepared her suit with care. Each piece of metal, each seal of glass, each carefully adjusted valve was a bridge between the known and the unknown. As she lowered her helmet into place, a soft hiss filled the air, followed by silence. Outside, the water embraced her completely. The first sensation was not fear, but surrender, the gentle weight of the sea pressing against her, not as a burden, but as a reminder that she was entering a world shaped by patience. She moved slowly, every motion deliberate. The sand beneath her boots shifted softly with each step, releasing faint clouds that drifted upward like smoke. Above her, filtered light shimmered, diffused through the layers of blue, a dream of sunlight rather than the sun itself. Sandy took her first long look around. The landscape stretched endlessly, sculpted by time and motion. Coral formations rose like towers, covered in life, small creatures darting in and out, moving with quiet purpose. Tiny bubbles rose from hidden vents, glimmering like stars in reverse. There was beauty in every direction, but also a stillness that demanded respect. The sea did not welcome carelessly. It simply existed, vast, impartial, waiting for those who would listen. As she explored, Sandy realized that the sea spoke through pressure, through rhythm, through repetition. The currents pulled and released, not in defiance, but in conversation. Every movement of water was a question, and every steadying breath she took was an answer. She paused by a rock formation that reminded her of cliffs. Back in Texas, strong, unyielding, yet shaped by years of wind and weather. Here, too, she saw the same truth. Nothing resisted the flow forever. Even the hardest stone bent, softened, and changed when given enough time. In that moment, Sandy understood something deep and simple. That strength was not about standing still, but about remaining whole while everything around you moved. She recorded her thoughts when she returned to the dome later that cycle. Her words were gentle, reflective. The ocean teaches without sound. It waits. It presses. It breathes. You cannot rush it, only join it. In the following days, her explorations grew longer. She moved through forests of kelp that swayed like slow green clouds, their leaves brushing gently against her suit. She observed the way schools of fish moved as one, never colliding, never breaking formation, as though they shared a single awareness. When she stopped, the fish would sometimes stop, too, hovering in a circle around her, curious but calm. Their black eyes mirrored her reflection, and in that reflection, she saw not an intruder, but another creature simply trying to belong. Sandy began to notice the subtler signs of life, the tiny shells buried in sand, the faint patterns carved by passing currents. Nothing in the ocean was still, yet everything seemed at peace. Movement here was not chaos, it was harmony. Once, as she ventured farther from her dome, she found a deep crevice in the seafloor. It was darker there, cooler, the light above fading into a soft, endless blue. The silence deepened. She felt the weight of the ocean pressing gently against her chest, as though reminding her that she was a guest in this vast cathedral of water. At the edge of the crevice, she stopped and looked down. Bubbles rose slowly from unseen vents, curling upward in spirals. She realized then how alive the sea truly was, breathing, pulsing, growing in ways that could not be seen from above. Back in her dome, she rested with her helmet set beside her. The hum of her air system blended with the faint echoes of the ocean beyond. The lessons of the day stayed with her, lessons not written in books, but carved in silence. She sat under her tree, her gloved fingers tracing the grooves of its artificial bark. It reminded her that life, no matter how far it traveled, always found a way to grow, even under glass. As she closed her eyes, she felt her heart slow to match the rhythm of the water outside. For the first time, she did not feel like a visitor to the ocean, but a student of it, a small being in a vast world that spoke through patience, through quiet, through time. And in that stillness, she understood that learning from the sea meant surrendering to its pace. The ocean did not rush, and neither would she. Inside her dome, the gentle hum of machines became a second heartbeat. Every device she had built, air purifiers, water circulators, energy converters, now seemed alive in a new way, responding to the subtle rhythms of the ocean outside. Sandy Cheeks watched as currents flowed past her dome, patterns she could not alter but could learn to harmonize with. She realized that science was not only about control, it was about observation, patience, and alignment. Her inventions had once been designed to dominate the environment, to shape it, bend it, and master it. But the sea had taught her otherwise. It spoke quietly, insisting that true understanding required surrender to its pace rather than resistance against it. Sandy began experimenting with a different approach. She adjusted valves, repositioned conduits, and recalibrated sensors not to force outcomes but to follow the natural flow of water and pressure. Machines responded differently when she moved with the current, rather than against it. Tubes glimmered with refracted light, gears rotated with softer hums, and filters purified more efficiently, in perfect synchrony with the subtle motions outside. She spent hours observing these small shifts, fascinated by how even minor adjustments allowed harmony to emerge. Her lab was no longer just a place of production. It became a sanctuary of learning, a space where technology and nature coexisted in quiet balance. Outside the dome, currents danced through the kelp forests, drawing spirals in the sand. Sandy mirrored these movements in her experiments, letting the natural flow dictate her methods. She noticed how every detail mattered: the angle of a pipe, the gentle tension of a spring, the rhythm of air release. Each small choice became a dialogue with the world around her. During these experiments, she often paused to simply listen. The dome itself hummed softly, a mechanical heartbeat in harmony with the pulse of the sea. It was in these moments of stillness that Sandy discovered the subtle beauty of patience. Not every problem required action, and not every solution demanded force. Sometimes, understanding grew simply by waiting, observing, and adapting. She recorded her reflections carefully, writing notes in the spiral-bound journal she had brought from Texas. She wrote about currents and pressure, about movement and rest, about the way machines could coexist with living systems without imposing dominance. Science is not conquest. Science is listening. It is patience, reflection, and respect for the forces that already exist. These words became her guiding principle. Each day, she tested it further, integrating her knowledge of mechanics with the rhythms of the ocean. Tiny adjustments, a recalibrated pump, a repositioned sensor, a modified valve, resulted in a smoother, more efficient system, one that breathed with the dome rather than forcing it. Sandy began to appreciate that this balance was not only mechanical, but personal. The same patience she applied to her experiments could be applied to herself. Her curiosity, her drive, and even her longing for the surface all required a gentle, deliberate approach. Pushing too hard would create tension. Yielding too easily would diminish growth. Harmony, she understood, existed in the careful balance between effort and surrender. As the cycle continued, Sandy found herself more attuned to the creatures around her. Fish, jellyfish, and other denizens of the sea moved closer to her dome, drawn not by fear nor by sudden movements, but by the subtle rhythm she had cultivated. They seemed to recognize the calm energy emanating from her space, a presence aligned with the natural world rather than opposed to it. At night, the glow of bioluminescent algae filtered through the dome's walls, soft and steady. Sandy would sit beneath her tree, the faint scent of artificial grass mingling with the filtered air. She closed her eyes and imagined the flow of energy in her systems, the way water moved through tubes, the gentle pressure of currents, and the quiet hum of life all around her. Her mind became a mirror of the ocean's patience, her thoughts moving slowly and deliberately, observing each impulse before acting. Every experiment, every adjustment, every observation became an act of mindfulness. She discovered that even small machines, valves, pumps, and filters could teach profound lessons about life. They responded to gentle pressure, subtle balance, and steady attention, just as living systems did. She began to see her inventions not as tools of control, but as partners in understanding. Sandy's daily routine shifted. She began her mornings with observation rather than action, letting the currents dictate the pace. Her afternoons were filled with small experiments, always guided by the principle of harmony rather than force. And as night fell, she rested under her tree, listening to the hum of the dome and the subtle music of the ocean beyond. In this quiet rhythm, she realized a truth that resonated deeper than any invention or calculation. Understanding, whether of machines or life itself, could not be rushed. It required time, attention, patience, and the willingness to move with forces greater than oneself. By the end of each cycle, Sandy would step back and admire her work. The dome glowed softly in the filtered light, the machines functioning in perfect synchrony with the ocean outside. She felt a calm pride, not in domination, but in collaboration, a harmony she had never known in the open skies of Texas, yet one that felt entirely like home. And as she rested that night, breathing slowly, she understood that the greatest discoveries were not in the mechanics alone, but in the quiet awareness of the self within the vastness of the sea, the patient observation, the stillness, and the understanding that all things, when approached with care, could coexist in peace. The ocean, vast and patient, had begun to reveal not only its silent lessons, but also its subtle connections. Sandy Cheeks, immersed in her experiments and reflections, began to notice the gentle patterns of life around her dome. Movements that once seemed random now carried meaning, and creatures that drifted near seemed to share in the rhythm she had cultivated. Among these currents of life, a presence gradually emerged, one bright, energetic, and uncontainably curious. It moved with a rhythm that was different from the others, yet complementary, a pulse of joy and spontaneity that neither rushed nor disturbed the ocean's balance. Sandy recognized this presence not as intrusion, but as an opportunity to extend the quiet harmony she had learned. It was SpongeBob, the sponge whose laughter and energy could fill any space with warmth. At first, his approach startled her. The sudden flurry of movement, the bright exclamations, the unrestrained curiosity seemed almost chaotic against the backdrop of her measured existence. Yet Sandy, grounded in patience, chose observation over reaction. She allowed him to explore, to investigate, and to move in his natural rhythm, understanding that friendship, like the ocean, required presence and acceptance rather than control. She began to recognize the subtle ways in which SpongeBob's energy complemented her own calm. While she measured and adjusted, he discovered and delighted. Where she observed, he experienced. And gradually, in the shared space of the dome and its surrounding waters, a silent understanding formed. Over time, Sandy found herself anticipating his visits. She would prepare small areas of the dome to accommodate his enthusiasm, gentle currents to guide movement, safe pathways among her instruments, and spaces to watch the sea together without interference. SpongeBob's curiosity became a bridge between the discipline of her work and the spontaneity of life outside. reminding her that calm, joy could coexist. She also noticed how he respected boundaries, even unknowingly. He learned the rhythms of her experiments, the quiet zones near her dome, and the small signs that indicated concentration or rest. In this, Sandy realized that friendship was not always spoken. It was often expressed in the gentle adjustments and awareness shared between companions. Days flowed into cycles of activity and quiet reflection. Sandy observed SpongeBob's fascination with her inventions, the way he studied the air filters, the small devices that circulated water, and the mechanisms that maintained balance in her dome. She marveled at his unstructured approach, his willingness to touch, explore, and imagine. His joy illuminated details she had overlooked, revealing new perspectives within her own work. Yet, even as friendship grew, Sandy maintained her own rhythm. She would retreat to her tree beneath the soft hum of her dome, meditating on lessons from the ocean and her own heart. Friendship did not demand compromise of self. Rather, it enriched understanding, extending the harmony she had cultivated within to include another presence. The ocean seemed to respond to this newfound balance. Currents flowed gently past the dome, carrying schools of fish in graceful arcs. Jellyfish drifted in luminescent clusters, reflecting the soft glow from the dome's interior. Every ripple, every movement, became a gentle conversation between Sandy, SpongeBob, and the world around them. Through these shared moments, Sandy began to understand the deeper currents of companionship. It was not about controlling another's energy, nor about bending their nature to one's own. It was about observing, responding, and creating space for mutual growth, a dance as subtle and precise as the flow of tides. She wrote in her journal during quiet evenings, "Friendship is a current. It moves softly, unseen at times, yet shapes the course of life profoundly. To guide is not to command. To accompany is not to possess. Presence and attention create connection." The dome, once a solitary sanctuary, became a shared space, a place where invention, observation, and companionship intertwined. Sandy marveled at the way the ocean allowed these threads to coexist, teaching her that even in solitude, connection was always possible when approached with patience, respect, and awareness. Sandy's relationship with SpongeBob continued to deepen, not through words, but through shared experience. They watched distant fish together, noted the movements of the tides, and occasionally experimented side by side, her meticulous adjustments complemented by his exuberant curiosity. In this delicate interplay, Sandy discovered a joy unlike any she had known alone, a warmth that enhanced rather than distracted from her reflections. As night fell, the dome glowed softly, reflecting the luminescent life outside. Sandy and SpongeBob rested near the artificial tree, the gentle hum of her systems blending with the distant echoes of the sea. In the quiet, she felt a profound sense of peace, that life, even beneath layers of water and isolation, could nurture companionship, learning, and growth simultaneously. And in that moment, Sandy Cheeks understood that the currents of friendship, like the currents of the ocean, were subtle, patient, and enduring. They shaped her world not through force, but through presence, acceptance, and the quiet joy of shared exploration. The ocean was never still, yet it was never hurried. Every day, Sandy Cheeks discovered a new rhythm, a lesson hidden in movement, in light, or in the gentle sway of kelp. With SpongeBob by her side, the currents of curiosity became more vivid, more intricate, yet no less serene. Together, they explored the spaces just beyond her dome, where shadows played among the coral and the water shimmered with refracted light. Sandy observed the careful ways SpongeBob approached each new shape, each glimmering surface, with wide-eyed wonder. His fascination was unbound by expectation, unrestrained by precision, and in response, Sandy felt her own curiosity deepening, tempered by reflection and patience. Every rock held a story, every plant a secret, every swirl of water a lesson waiting to be read. Sandy began to see the ocean not as a laboratory, but as a teacher, one that guided through subtlety, rather than instruction. She watched how the tiniest creatures navigated currents, how jellyfish drifted with elegance, and how schools of fish moved with quiet synchronization. Patterns emerged, delicate and intricate, and in them, Sandy recognized both logic and beauty. SpongeBob's laughter, soft and buoyant, echoed through the water in gentle bubbles. It startled her at first, but she soon realized it was not intrusion, it was expression, a natural response to the wonder that surrounded them. His unrestrained curiosity became a mirror, reflecting possibilities she might have overlooked. Sandy began incorporating these lessons into her experiments. She observed the way currents carried nutrients, the subtle way pressure shaped coral growth, and how light filtered differently depending on the time and depth. Every observation informed her adjustments to the dome's systems, guiding her to create balance rather than force. She wrote in her journal, her words flowing with both scientific insight and quiet contemplation. Curiosity is a gentle current. It moves without urgency, yet it carries the mind to depths unseen. To observe is to honor the world. To explore is to become part of its rhythm. Sandy and SpongeBob discovered small wonders together, a hidden patch of bioluminescent plankton that glowed like a scattered constellation, a school of tiny, translucent shrimp that moved in perfect synchrony, and patterns of sand etched by currents that resembled intricate carvings. These discoveries were not grand, yet they were profound, revealing that the ocean's depth contained infinite detail and beauty. The presence of another mind beside her changed the way Sandy interacted with these wonders. SpongeBob's reactions reminded her that observation could be joyful, and that sharing discovery deepened understanding. He pointed out patterns she might have missed, approached each phenomenon with awe, and reminded her that the act of noticing itself was a treasure. Even during quiet moments of stillness, their shared curiosity shaped the point, space. Sandy would trace the path of a drifting bubble or follow the flicker of a distant fish, while SpongeBob mirrored her attentiveness in his own playful, spontaneous way. Together, they created a rhythm, measured and exuberant, reflective and alive. These moments also deepened Sandy's understanding of connection. Curiosity was not merely a personal pursuit, it was relational. It created bonds, bridged differences, and fostered a shared appreciation for the subtle lessons of the world. She realized that the ocean, in its patient expanse, offered infinite opportunity for learning, but that its lessons were most profound when shared. Night fell softly. The dome bathed in gentle glow from bioluminescent creatures outside. Sandy rested under her tree, watching faint currents ripple across the glass. SpongeBob drifted nearby, content and quiet for once, allowing her space to reflect. She thought of the discoveries of the day, of the joy of exploration tempered by patience, and of the subtle ways curiosity could shape not only knowledge, but companionship. In these gentle hours, Sandy Cheeks understood that the ocean's greatest lesson was not in the things she could catalog or measure, but in the manner of their observation. Curiosity required mindfulness, presence, and the willingness to see the world as it moved, slowly, patiently, endlessly. And as she closed her eyes, the dome filled with the quiet symphony of life outside. The rhythm of currents, the subtle flicker of light, the whisper of passing creatures, and the shared pulse of friendship. In that harmony, she felt a profound peace, knowing that in curiosity, in observation, and in shared wonder, she had discovered not only the secrets of the sea, but the deeper currents of life itself. There were times when the dome felt utterly silent. SpongeBob had returned to his own adventures, and the ocean beyond the glass shimmered in stillness. These were the moments Sandy Cheeks cherished most, not for loneliness, but for the profound clarity that solitude brought. Beneath the water, away from the bright skies of Texas and the bustling energy of Bikini Bottom, she discovered a depth within herself that had been waiting, patient, and quiet. Solitude was not emptiness. It was a canvas upon which she could measure thought, reflection, and presence. She would sit beneath her artificial tree, the soft light of the dome spilling across the small patch of grass, and let her mind wander in rhythm with the currents. Each exhale was deliberate, each inhale a quiet expansion into the world around her. In the absence of distraction, she found focus. In the absence of motion, she felt the subtle motion of life itself. The ocean, ever patient, mirrored her introspection. Shadows of drifting fish moved lazily across the sandy floor, the gentle sway of kelp like a slow, deliberate dance. Even the faint hiss of her machines blended seamlessly with the pulse of the sea, reinforcing a sense of continuity and calm. Sandy reflected on the life she had left behind. The wide-open plains, the scent of wind through pine, the sun rising over familiar hills. Though the memories brought a gentle ache of longing, they also reminded her of the strength that had carried her here. Leaving the sky had not been escape. It had been an exercise of courage, foresight, and trust in her own abilities. In solitude, she recognized that strength was quiet. It did not demand applause or recognition. It grew in steady rhythms, in observation, in patience, and in the deliberate choices made when no one else was watching. It was the strength to continue learning, even when progress was slow. The strength to care, even when unseen. The strength to exist in harmony with forces far greater than oneself. Her experiments, refined by patience and attentiveness, became extensions of this inner strength. Each adjustment, each calibration, each subtle realignment of her dome systems reflected not just knowledge, but mindfulness. Machines, when guided with care, responded gently. They were instruments of harmony rather than control, mirrors of the balance she had cultivated within. Sandy also meditated on connection. Solitude did not mean separation from the world. Rather, it created space to understand and appreciate the relationships that existed, even at a distance. SpongeBob, though energetic and unpredictable, had become a quiet reminder that connection and independence could coexist, that one could be rooted in self while still embracing others. Sometimes, she ventured beyond the dome alone, allowing the currents to guide her. She observed patterns in the sand, the behavior of tiny crustaceans, and the gentle rhythm of bubbles rising to the surface. In these silent excursions, she felt both small and infinite, a single thread in a vast tapestry, yet intimately connected to every movement around her. She began to document her reflections with care, writing in her journal by the soft glow of bioluminescent plankton. Her words were not hurried. They flowed slowly, deliberately, capturing the quiet lessons of solitude. To be alone is to be fully present. Strength is not always seen in action, but in patience, reflection, and understanding. In stillness, the mind learns the rhythm of life. Evenings were the most contemplative. The dome's interior glowed softly, casting gentle shadows across the familiar objects she had brought from land. The artificial breeze, the small tree, the carefully arranged instruments, all became symbols of her journey, proof that care, attention, and resilience could shape an environment as much as any machine or tool. Sandy Cheeks understood that solitude was also a teacher. It encouraged humility, revealed subtle truths, and allowed her to connect with the ocean at a pace that was unhurried and profound. Through quiet observation, she could see the unseen currents, feel the faint pressures, and sense the living patterns that shaped life beneath the surface. By the end of these days of quiet reflection, Sandy felt a calm power that was steady and enduring. It was the strength to meet challenges without fear, the patience to observe without rushing, and the awareness to balance independence with connection. In solitude, she had found a clarity that energized every experiment, every exploration, and every moment of companionship when it came. And as she rested under her tree, breathing slowly, Sandy Cheeks felt the ocean's quiet affirmation that strength, like the tides, need not roar. It could flow gently, persist steadily, and endure eternally. A current beneath all life, subtle yet unyielding, guiding her forward in both work and spirit. Beneath the gentle sway of her dome, Sandy Cheeks often thought of the ocean as a vast, patient teacher, but the deeper she explored, the more she realized that the ocean's lessons were subtle, hidden in layers of movement, pressure, and light. Each day offered insight. Each current revealed patterns that spoke not only to the mind but to the heart. She ventured farther from the familiar territory around her dome, navigating through quiet canyons and shadowed valleys beneath the waves. Here, the light softened, shifting from bright aqua to muted teal, and every sound, the faint echo of distant creatures, the hum of water through crevices, became more pronounced. The ocean's language grew clearer in this stillness. Sandy observed how life adapted to the depth. Small fish darted between crevices, moving with agility and purpose. Crabs scuttled along the sandy floor, their movements precise and measured. Even the silent sway of plants in the dim light spoke to a rhythm dictated by time, pressure, and circumstance. She began to understand that resilience was not always visible, but manifested in the quiet persistence of life itself. The deeper zones revealed patience in ways she had not seen near the dome. Currents flowed slowly, imperceptibly, yet they shaped the sand, sculpted coral, and guided every living being in subtle but profound ways. Sandy noted the parallels with her own life. Patience, careful observation, and small adjustments often achieved more than force or haste. She paused near a cluster of bioluminescent organisms, their gentle glow illuminating the shadowed water. The faint, pulsing light reminded her of breaths, of the quiet heartbeat of the ocean. In these moments, Sandy felt both small and intimately connected, a single point of consciousness amid the vast web of life. Her thoughts wandered to her experiments within the dome. She realized that her machines could mimic this balance if approached correctly, not as devices to dominate, but as systems to harmonize. Each adjustment, no matter how minor, could ripple outward, shaping outcomes subtly yet profoundly, just as the ocean shaped its depths. Occasionally, SpongeBob accompanied her on these explorations. His energy was a gentle contrast to the measured depths. While Sandy observed, analyzed, and reflected, he experienced, delighted, and imagined. Together, they formed a quiet rhythm, curiosity paired with patience, action balanced with reflection. Sandy discovered that some lessons required stillness. She would hover near a rock formation for hours, watching the play of shadows, the movement of particles in the current, and the behavior of small crustaceans. In this quiet observation, she saw resilience and cooperation unfold naturally, without intervention. She understood that life often thrived not through control, but through adaptation and patience. Her journal filled with reflections. The depths teach without urgency. Every life, every movement, every change is part of a rhythm that we may not fully perceive, yet we are a part of it. To survive and to thrive is to move in harmony, not against. Beyond the practical lessons, Sandy sensed a deeper, almost spiritual rhythm. The ocean's vastness mirrored the expanse of her own thoughts, each current a metaphor for the flow of life, moments of clarity, pressure, stillness, and movement. She understood that growth often came quietly, beneath the surface, unseen yet persistent. She also recognized that vulnerability was part of resilience. In the deeper waters, she could feel the immense weight of the ocean, the pressures that might overwhelm an unprepared mind or body. Yet by aligning her own rhythm with the currents, she experienced strength that was calm, steady, and enduring. True power, she realized, was never aggressive. It was adaptive, patient, and aware. By the end of these explorations, Sandy returned to her dome with a sense of quiet accomplishment. The water outside flowed unchanged, yet she carried the lessons of the depths within her. Every experiment, every adjustment, every interaction with SpongeBob or the surrounding life became infused with this understanding. In the soft glow of her dome, she reflected. The ocean's lessons were infinite. Its patience, its balance, its subtle instruction, all could be mirrored in her own life, in her inventions, and in her friendships. Solitude and connection, curiosity and reflection, action and stillness, all were part of the same rhythm, waiting to be recognized. As she rested beneath her tree that evening, Sandy Cheeks allowed herself to feel the quiet joy of learning. The depths had spoken, and she had listened. In this space of gentle understanding, the ocean, her dome, and her own heart moved as one, an unbroken current of life, wisdom, and peace. Beneath the dome, Sandy Cheeks often reflected on the intricate balance of her life, the precision of her inventions, and the unpredictable rhythm of the ocean, the measured patience she cultivated, and the spontaneous joys of friendship. Each day brought reminders that the world was composed of forces both seen and unseen, both measurable and mysterious. Sandy realized that logic alone, though powerful, could not account for every nuance beneath the waves. Machines could calculate, analyze, and regulate, but they could not sense the subtle pulse of currents, the gentle hesitation of a passing fish, or the quiet joy in SpongeBob's curiosity. To truly understand her environment, she would need to pair intellect with feeling, calculation with intuition, and analysis with awareness. She began to approach her experiments differently. Instead of purely optimizing systems for efficiency, she considered their harmony with life around her. Pipes and pumps, valves and filters were adjusted, not only for technical precision, but also to accommodate the gentle rhythms of the sea creatures that visited her dome. She realized that a small, thoughtful change could enhance coexistence, allowing both machine and ocean to thrive in balance. Sandy also reflected on her friendships. SpongeBob, with his boundless energy, had no filter, no careful calculation. Yet in his unrestrained curiosity, she found insights that reason alone could not provide. He approached problems with a heart-driven logic, noticing patterns of life, delight, and interaction that she might have overlooked. Together, they embodied a harmony of opposites: reason and intuition, discipline and spontaneity, observation and experience. She wrote in her journal as she watched the soft glow of bioluminescent life outside. Logic can explain structure, predict movement, and maintain order. Heart can perceive nuance, nurture connection, and inspire wonder. Neither is sufficient alone. Balance is found where the two meet. The dome itself became a reflection of this philosophy. Systems were precise, yet flexible. Mechanical routines accommodated the movements of the ocean, creating a space that was orderly, yet alive. Every adjustment reflected her growing understanding that control was not about dominance but about harmony, a partnership between intellect and empathy. In her solitary moments, Sandy meditated on this principle. She watched the currents bend around coral formations, the synchronized dance of a school of fish, and the delicate pulsing of plankton in the dim light. Each moment of observation reinforced her awareness. The world functioned not only by law, but by grace, not only by calculation, but by presence. Sandy began integrating this balance into her daily life. Her movements became slower, more deliberate, yet attuned to subtle shifts around her. Experiments progressed more smoothly, as she allowed room for observation and intuition alongside planning and measurement. Even her friendships became richer, guided by awareness, empathy, and mutual respect. The ocean, in its patient expansiveness, seemed to approve. Currents flowed with gentle consistency, and creatures approached her dome with increasing ease. Even SpongeBob's sometimes chaotic energy felt less intrusive, harmonizing with her own steady rhythm. Through these quiet lessons, Sandy discovered that the balance of logic and heart was not a static state, but a continuous practice. Each day required adjustment, reflection, and mindfulness. Every decision, whether mechanical, personal, or observational, became a chance to apply this understanding, to align intention with awareness, and to cultivate equilibrium in all aspects of life. As night fell, the dome glowed softly, reflecting the luminescent beauty of the ocean beyond. Sandy rested beneath her tree, inhaling slowly, exhaling gently. She felt the pulse of life around her, both human and marine, mechanical and organic, Logic had guided her to build, heart had guided her to connect, and together they created a rhythm both resilient and serene. In that quiet harmony, Sandy Cheeks understood a profound truth. Knowledge and empathy, reason and feeling, curiosity and reflection, when balanced, created a life not merely endured, but fully lived. She had learned to see the unseen, to hear the unspoken, and to move in concert with the currents of both the ocean and her own spirit. And in the calm embrace of her dome, she knew that this balance would guide her through every exploration, every friendship, and every moment yet to come. Beneath a gentle sway of her dome, Sandy Cheeks often paused to consider the meaning of home. She had traveled far from the wide skies and open plains of Texas, leaving behind familiar winds, sunlight, and the earthy scent of pine and soil. Yet, in the quiet expanse of the ocean, she had built something entirely her own, a sanctuary of air, life, and reflection. Her dome, a sphere of glass and steel, was more than a structure. It was a bridge between two worlds, a place where the currents of the ocean could meet the familiar comforts of land. Within its walls, air flowed steadily, grass grew under a soft breeze, and the trees she had planted swayed gently with artificial wind. Every detail was an echo of the home she had left behind, recreated through care, thought, and ingenuity. Home, Sandy realized, was not merely a place. It was a rhythm, a feeling of balance between self, environment, and the life surrounding her. The ocean, vast and patient, had taught her that home could exist anywhere if one carried purpose, presence, and harmony within. Sandy walked through her dome slowly, observing the small systems she had built. Valves pulsed, tubes hummed, and water flowed in gentle arcs, each movement a quiet testament to her efforts. Yet it was the quiet life outside the dome that truly defined her sense of belonging. The gentle sway of kelp, the passing schools of fish, the soft luminescence of plankton floating in the dim light. Home was not merely the air she breathed, or the objects she had placed. It was the living world that embraced her without demand. SpongeBob's presence added warmth to this understanding. His visits brought laughter, curiosity, and a spontaneous joy that reminded Sandy that home was also shared, a space of trust, connection, and gentle companionship. Even when he was absent, his energy lingered, echoing softly in the hum of the dome, the sway of her artificial tree, and the rhythm of her own heartbeat. In solitude, Sandy reflected further. She remembered the vast skies she had left, the familiar hills, and the friends who inhabited her memories. She realized that home was not a single point on a map, nor a fixed collection of objects. It was a feeling of alignment, of purpose, of rhythm, of harmony with oneself and the world around. Her dome, suspended beneath the currents of the ocean, had become a living testament to this truth. Within it, air, water, light, and life coexisted in balance. Outside it, the ocean stretched infinitely, patient and ever-changing. Between these two worlds, Sandy had carved a space of serenity, a home not confined to walls, but expansive, reflective, and alive. She often sat beneath her tree, gazing through the dome at the shifting water. Currents carried particles that shimmered like stars, and faint shadows moved in fluid dance. In these moments, Sandy felt a profound connection to both the land she had left and the ocean she now called home. She understood that home could be both constant and evolving, shaped by attention, care, and the willingness to live in harmony with what surrounds her. Her journal reflected this growing understanding. Home is not walls or land alone. Home is rhythm, balance, and presence. It is a feeling that moves with us, a sanctuary that exists wherever care, reflection, and harmony are cultivated. Evenings were the most contemplative. The dome glowed softly as bioluminescent life outside provided gentle illumination. Sandy breathed slowly, matching the rhythm of the ocean. She felt the currents, not as force, but as companions. Their movement, reminding her that connection, like home, required awareness, patience, and alignment. Through these quiet reflections, Sandy Cheeks embraced the full sense of her life beneath the sea. Home was the dome she had built, yes, but it was also the ocean that surrounded her, the life she observed, the friendships she nurtured, and the inner harmony she carried. It was a space where intellect met intuition, where curiosity met reflection, and where solitude met connection. And as she rested beneath her tree, inhaling the calm air of her creation, she understood that the true essence of home was not simply the shelter she had built, but the life, balance, and serenity she had cultivated within and around her. In the quiet world beneath the waves, Sandy Cheeks discovered that curiosity was not simply a spark of excitement, but a subtle, enduring force. It was a rhythm, a patient attention to detail, and a willingness to learn without expectation. Each day, the ocean offered new lessons, hidden in the movement of currents, the play of light, and the subtle behavior of the creatures around her. Sandy's curiosity was disciplined, guided by observation and reflection. She studied the flow of water, noticing how currents shaped the sand, moved plankton, and guided schools of fish. She observed patterns in the light, how it refracted through the water, and how bioluminescent creatures used it to communicate. Every detail was a window into the ocean's quiet intelligence. SpongeBob's playful curiosity complemented her own. Where Sandy measured, he marveled. Where she reflected, he experimented. Together, they formed a partnership in exploration, his enthusiasm igniting ideas she might not have considered, her patience guiding their adventures to meaningful observation. Curiosity, Sandy realized, required resilience. It demanded patience to wait for patterns to emerge, attention to notice what was subtle, and courage to approach the unknown. It was not about rushing to conclusions, but allowing understanding to grow naturally, shaped by experience and reflection. One afternoon, she observed a delicate formation of coral, its shape altered by slow currents over countless cycles. Tiny fish darted in and out of crevices, each movement purposeful, yet unhurried. Sandy felt a profound respect for the persistence and adaptability of life, realizing that curiosity was not merely an individual trait, but a collective one, a force shared among all living beings who observed, learned, and adapted to their environment. She recorded her insights carefully in her journal. Curiosity is a quiet strength. It does not demand attention, yet it uncovers truths. It does not force outcomes, yet it shapes understanding. To observe with care is to be part of life's rhythm. The dome itself became a laboratory of curiosity. Sandy adjusted her instruments, not only to collect data, but to observe the interplay of life around her. She noted how small changes affected both her experiments and the behavior of nearby creatures. She discovered that curiosity was as much about listening as it was about seeing, as much about patience as it was about action. Sandy also began to notice the emotional side of curiosity. Her fascination brought joy and engagement, while SpongeBob's delight reminded her that discovery could be shared. Curiosity connected them to each other, to the ocean, and to the life that flourished in subtle, interconnected ways. It was a bridge between observation and empathy, science and feeling. During deeper explorations, she observed phenomena that challenged her understanding. Currents shifting unexpectedly, patterns of light that seemed to respond to her movement, and behaviors in marine life that required careful interpretation. These moments reinforced the idea that curiosity required humility, the acceptance that not all questions have immediate answers, and that some truths emerge only over time. By nightfall, Sandy rested beneath her tree, her journal open beside her. She reflected on the day, on the lessons of patience, observation, and shared exploration. Curiosity, she realized, was not merely a path to knowledge. It was a form of engagement with the world, a gentle strength that nurtured understanding, connection, and resilience. In the soft glow of the dome, with currents whispering around her and the faint echo of SpongeBob's laughter lingering in the distance, Sandy Cheeks felt the quiet power of her curiosity. It was a force that shaped her actions, deepened her reflections, and connected her to the vast, patient life of the ocean. And as she drifted toward rest, she understood that the strength of Saf, curiosity, was not in its speed or intensity, but in its constancy, a steady, enduring rhythm that guided her through exploration, learning, and the quiet wonder of life beneath the sea. Sandy Cheeks had come to understand that the ocean's deepest lessons were often invisible, whispered not through spectacle, but through subtle patterns that required attention and time. One such lesson, ever present yet easily overlooked, was patience. Patience in motion, the gentle guidance of effort aligned with natural flow, became the guiding principle of her life beneath the waves. She noticed it in the way currents shaped the sand slowly over countless cycles, how coral grew with measured persistence, and how even the tiniest creatures moved with deliberate, purposeful energy. There was no haste, yet no stagnation. Everything progressed at a pace dictated by rhythm, balance, and endurance. Her experiments within the dome mirrored this understanding. Sandy adjusted her machinery not abruptly, but incrementally, observing responses, allowing systems to settle before making further refinements. Tubes hummed gently, valves pulsed with measured rhythm, and water flowed smoothly through her circuits. She realized that true efficiency was not achieved through force, but through alignment with natural processes. SpongeBob, though less methodical, had lessons to teach as well. His energy and enthusiasm, initially chaotic against her measured approach, gradually revealed their own subtle rhythms. Sandy observed how he moved through the dome, interacted with creatures, and approached challenges, an unplanned cadence that, when met with her patience, created harmony rather than conflict. In these moments, Sandy understood that patience was not passive. It required awareness, presence, and deliberate choice. To wait, observe, and adjust was an active engagement with the world, a recognition that outcomes could not be rushed without losing nuance and balance. She often wandered beyond the dome, tracing the paths of small currents that wound through kelp forests and over sandy plains. The ocean moved steadily around her, never hurried, yet always purposeful. Sandy felt her own movements slowing to match this rhythm, deliberate steps, careful observations, gentle breaths. She sensed the pulse of life in everything she passed, tiny fish weaving through shadows, crustaceans adjusting to pressure changes, and plankton drifting with gentle arcs. Her journal reflected these contemplations. Patience is not waiting idly, nor is it surrender. It is aligning oneself with the rhythms of life, moving deliberately, and observing with care. In patience, motion finds purpose. Even in times of challenge, patience remained a quiet companion. Sandy recalled experiments that had failed, mechanical adjustments that needed recalibration, and moments when creatures acted unpredictably. Instead of frustration, she cultivated understanding, noting patterns, learning from mistakes, and adjusting her approach without haste. Each instance became an opportunity to refine her practice, both scientifically and personally. The dome itself seemed to respond to this rhythm. Water flowed more smoothly through tubes, instruments performed with greater harmony, and life around the structure became more confident in its movement. Patience, Sandy realized, was not just an internal discipline. It shaped the environment itself. At dusk, with the glow of bioluminescent life shimmering outside, Sandy sat beneath her tree and reflected on the lessons of the day. She thought of how the ocean had taught her to move in rhythm, how curiosity and observation had deepened her understanding, and how friendship with SpongeBob added warmth and perspective to her life. She understood now that patience in motion was a form of strength. It allowed her to act effectively, adapt gracefully, and coexist peacefully with both living and mechanical systems. It was a principle that transcended the dome, the ocean, and even the experiments she conducted, guiding her in every interaction, every thought, and every choice. As the currents whispered around her and the dome's soft hum filled the space, Sandy Cheeks felt a calm certainty. Life, like the ocean, required rhythm, presence, and patience. When she moved with these currents, her actions, thoughts, and discoveries flowed with a quiet, enduring grace. And as night settled softly, Sandy allowed herself to rest, trusting the slow, steady motion of the ocean and the patience she had cultivated to guide her through both the known and unknown waters yet to come. Sandy Cheeks had learned that wisdom was not simply knowledge nor experience alone, but the delicate alignment of thought and action. Beneath the gentle currents surrounding her dome, she realized that reflection without movement could stagnate, and action without understanding could create imbalance. True harmony required both, each guiding the other. Her daily experiments became a meditation in integration. Adjustments to machinery were preceded by careful observation and reflection. Hypotheses were tested gently, with space for feedback from both instruments and the living world around her. She discovered that the results were not only more precise, but more elegant, the systems working in concert with life rather than imposing dominance over it. Sandy reflected on her own mind and heart. Intellectual rigor had always been her strength, yet in the ocean she discovered the need for empathy, patience, and attentiveness. Decisions made with thought alone often overlooked subtle currents of behavior, both mechanical and living. By blending reflection with action, she could respond in ways that honored both logic and life. SpongeBob remained her unplanned collaborator. His energy often seemed unpredictable, yet Sandy noticed a pattern. His actions, driven by curiosity and delight, complemented her methodical adjustments. She began to anticipate the ways their movements could align, creating a shared rhythm. Together, thought and action intertwined, producing results neither could achieve alone. The dome became a reflection of this balance. Tubes and valves moved smoothly, responding to both deliberate adjustments and the subtle influence of the surrounding ocean. Water flowed harmoniously. Sensors registered not only mechanical changes, but environmental nuance. And even the plants inside the dome swayed in gentle synchronicity with the currents. Sandy's journal captured these realizations. Thought informs action, and action informs thought. Harmony emerges when both move together, each guiding and refining the other. To act without reflection is reckless. To reflect without action is inert. Balance lies between. Beyond her experiments, Sandy applied this principle to daily life. Observing currents, she adjusted her own pace, slowing when the ocean demanded stillness, moving deliberately when opportunity presented itself. Her interactions with SpongeBob, the creatures of the sea, and even her own thoughts became exercises in synchronization. Every decision was considered, every movement intentional, yet each allowed for spontaneity and adaptation. Sandy also recognized that harmony was dynamic. The ocean never remained still, and circumstances changed constantly. To maintain alignment, she needed awareness, flexibility, and continuous adjustment. Harmony was not a final state, but an ongoing practice, a gentle dance between understanding and participation, observation and engagement. Evenings, when the dome glowed softly and the ocean reflected a quiet luminescence, became her time of reflection and calibration. Sandy would watch the subtle shifts in light, currents, and creature movement, letting her mind and body integrate the lessons of the day. The connection between thought and action deepened with each cycle, becoming a natural, unforced rhythm. In this calm integration, Sandy felt a profound sense of peace. Her experiments worked more smoothly, her movements were more intentional, and her interactions with the living world became richer. She understood that the ocean itself embodied this principle. Each current, creature, and pattern reflected the harmony of observation and response, reflection and movement. As she rested beneath her tree, inhaling the calm air of her dome, Sandy Cheeks allowed herself to feel the quiet joy of alignment. The dance of thought and action, when practiced with patience and awareness, created a life that was both productive and serene, deliberate yet flexible, precise yet deeply alive. And as the ocean whispered around her dome, Sandy understood that this harmony would guide her through every discovery, every challenge, and every interaction, a steady, enduring rhythm beneath the waves. Sandy Cheeks had long considered observation a cornerstone of both science and life. Beneath the dome, surrounded by the vast currents of the ocean, she realized that true observation required more than sight or measurement. It demanded patience, attentiveness, and a quiet mind willing to notice the subtle details often overlooked in haste. Every movement of the ocean offered insight. The sway of kelp in the current, the gentle arc of plankton drifting in rhythmic pulses, the delicate path of a fish weaving through coral. These patterns were not merely aesthetic, they were the living expression of balance, persistence, and adaptation. Sandy understood that to watch attentively was to learn, and to learn was to grow in both understanding and empathy. Her dome became a laboratory of observation. Sandy would follow the flow of water through carefully designed systems, noting how each adjustment influenced both machinery and life outside. She found that small, deliberate changes revealed more than grand, sweeping interventions ever could. The ocean responded subtly, yet perceptibly, a living partner in her experiments. SpongeBob, with his energetic curiosity, provided a contrast to her measured attention. While she watched and reflected, he explored freely, noticing patterns that she might not have considered. Together, their perspectives formed a quiet symphony, methodical observation intertwined with joyful discovery. In her journal, Sandy wrote, "Observation is more than seeing. It is listening, feeling, and understanding. The world reveals its truths, not to the hurried eye, but to the mind and heart attuned to its rhythms." She discovered that observation extended beyond the physical. By paying attention to SpongeBob's actions, the behaviors of sea creatures, and the subtle signals of her machines, Sandy began to sense relationships, intentions, and patterns that could not be measured. She recognized emotional currents, energy flows, and the quiet logic that governed living systems. The ocean itself seemed to reward her diligence. Currents flowed predictably, yet unpredictably, offering lessons in flexibility. Shadows moved across the sand in intricate, constantly shifting patterns, teaching her that stability exists even in constant change. Sandy found that the act of observing itself shaped her understanding, her patience, and her capacity for empathy. She also noted the interplay between observation and action. Seeing without responding was incomplete. Action without seeing was blind. By combining attentiveness with measured response, she could engage fully with the world around her, ensuring that her presence contributed positively to the harmony she sought to maintain. During these periods of quiet reflection, Sandy came to understand the profound power of subtlety. The ocean's lessons were often gentle, a shift in light, a pause in a current, a slight hesitation in a creature's movement. These minor signals carried meaning, and recognizing them required both patience and humility. Sandy applied this wisdom to every facet of her life beneath the waves. Experiments became more efficient, movements more deliberate, and interactions with SpongeBob and other creatures more attuned. Observation became a bridge between knowledge and empathy, between understanding and action, and between self and the environment. As night fell, the bioluminescent glow of the ocean filtered softly through the dome. Sandy rested beneath her tree, reflecting on the lessons of the day. She felt a quiet connection to both the mechanical systems she had built and the living systems surrounding her. Observation had revealed the delicate interdependence of all things, and in this awareness, she found peace. Sandy Cheeks understood that the wisdom of observation was not a final destination, but an ongoing practice. Each moment, each movement, each ripple in the ocean offered a new lesson, provided one had the patience and attentiveness to notice. Through observation, she had discovered harmony, understanding, and the gentle rhythms of life that flowed both within and around her. And as the ocean whispered beneath the dome, Sandy felt a profound sense of calm. The world, in all its complexity, could be understood not through force, but through patient observation, thoughtful action, and a heart attuned to the subtle music of life. The ocean had always been patient, vast, and infinitely complex, yet Sandy Cheeks had learned to move within it with quiet mastery. Not through force, but through understanding. Not through haste, but through deliberate, reflective presence. Every lesson, every observation, every experiment had brought her to this moment, a harmony of thought, action, curiosity, and patience. In her dome, the air was calm, the instruments hummed gently, and the soft sway of her tree reflected the quiet rhythm she had cultivated. Sandy watched the gentle movement of currents outside, noting the interplay of light, shadow, and life. She understood now that mastery was not domination, it was alignment, a seamless integration of self with the world around her. Sandy's experiments had become an extension of this principle. Every valve, every tube, every filter, adjusted with care, now operated in harmony with the currents outside. Life flowed gently around her dome. Small fish, drifting plankton, and the occasional curious crustacean all interacted with her creation without disruption. She had learned that mastery was subtle, guiding without constraining, shaping without overwhelming, observing without interfering. Her friendship with SpongeBob had deepened this understanding. His energy, initially unpredictable, now complemented her rhythm. Together, they moved through the dome and its surroundings with unspoken coordination, his curiosity igniting new possibilities, her reflection ensuring that each movement was intentional and harmonious. In this, Sandy realized that mastery included the ability to balance self and others, intellect and heart, observation and action. Sandy reflected on her journey beneath the waves, the lessons of solitude, the patient currents of the ocean, the interplay of logic and heart, and the quiet strength of curiosity. Each chapter of her experience had built upon the last, weaving a tapestry of understanding that was both profound and serene. She recognized that true mastery was less about knowing everything and more about moving gracefully with what was already present. Her journal captured the essence of this realization. Quiet mastery is not power over the world, but attunement to it. It is patience, presence, curiosity, and empathy woven together. It is a life lived in harmony, attentive to every ripple, every shadow, every pulse of the currents around us. Even as night fell, Sandy remained under her tree, gazing through the dome at the softly glowing ocean. The currents whispered their gentle secrets. The bioluminescent life shimmered in delicate patterns, and the faint echo of SpongeBob's laughter lingered in the air. In this moment, Sandy felt the culmination of all her learning, a profound, unshakable sense of peace. She understood that mastery was not a final achievement, but a continuous practice, a rhythm that flowed in every breath, every observation, and every choice. It was the balance of solitude, companionship, reflection and action, intellect and heart. And in embracing this, Sandy Cheeks had found not only competence and knowledge, but serenity, purpose, and connection. The ocean, vast and patient as ever, seemed to acknowledge her understanding. Currents flowed in gentle arcs, shadows danced with quiet precision, and life continued its subtle, enduring rhythm. Sandy felt herself a part of it all, a single point of consciousness moving gracefully within the infinite expanse of the sea. As she closed her eyes beneath her tree, breathing in the calm air of her dome, Sandy Cheeks allowed herself to rest completely. She had moved with the currents, learned from their subtlety, balanced thought and action, nurtured curiosity, and embraced both solitude and connection. She had reached a quiet mastery, one that was gentle, enduring, and profoundly peaceful. And in the silence of the dome, illuminated softly by the ocean's glow, sandy cheeks slept, knowing that the rhythms she had cultivated would carry her forward through every adventure, every challenge, and every quiet moment yet to come.